Eugene, Leland, 1892. The prophet Zephaniah exhorts all the meek of the earth to seek righteousness. The exhortation is not to the wicked world, but to the meek of the earth, and it is put in such words as to imply that their being hid in the day of the Lord's is only a possibility. It may be, says the prophet, ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. Zephaniah 2:3. The words of the Apostle Peter are similar. And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? In 1 Peter 4:18. If seeking for righteousness secures only a possibility of being hid in the day of the Lord's anger, and if those who are righteous are scarcely saved, how diligent must be the search for righteousness by those who are sure that they will be able to find a hiding place in that day. Righteousness is right doing. It is that kind of doing which is done in conformity to a perfect standard of right. One may think that his action is right, and other thinks that it is wrong. Now the only way in which the dispute can be settled is by referring the action to a standard or rule of action which both are agreed is right. So in every action of life, the only way in which to determine its character is to compare it with the perfect rule of right. Such a rule we find in the law of God. Says David, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. Psalm 19 verse 7. But the carnal heart is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. Romans 8:7. And what is worse, everyone is by nature in that carnal state. For, as it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. Romans 3:10. In short, no one is righteous because no one has ever done right, and no one can ever become righteous by doing right, because no one can do right, and therefore, if righteousness is ever secured, it must be in some other way than by doing right. The carnal heart can do only wrong, and hence, if the carnal heart could have righteousness by what it could do, we would have righteousness secured by wrongdoing, but that is absurd. If righteousness cannot be obtained by anything that one can do, how can it be secured? The Apostle Paul tells us, with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. Romans 10 verse 10. But righteousness is doing, not believing. What kind of righteousness can it be that is secured by believing? Again, the Apostle Paul answers, but now the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God which is by faith of Jesus Christ unto all and upon all them that believe. For there is no difference. Romans 3:21 and 22. Did God ever do wrong? Hasn't he always done right? Well then, with his righteousness unto and into and upon all of us who believe, we ought to be satisfied. We ought to rest in his righteousness and cease our varied efforts to clothe ourselves with the righteousness which at the best is but filthy rags. But does not the prophet admonish us to seek righteousness in the text first quoted above? And is not seeking an effort? It certainly is. But it is put forth in the direction of believing and not of doing. Righteousness is a gift, and it must be accepted as such. The only condition upon which it is given is believe, and right there is where the effort is to be made, that is, to believe. But we are so accustomed to paying for what we get, to reciprocating gifts, even from our nearest friends, that to think of accepting as a gift without our doing anything, that which is itself doing is almost incomprehensible. Nevertheless, it can be done. It must be done if we expect to be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. We must submit ourselves to the righteousness of God. The Jews did not do this, and so did not attain to the law of righteousness. Wherefore, because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. Romans 9:32. Let us be careful lest we make the same mistake. And when we have submitted to the righteousness of God, when we have accepted it as a free gift by faith of Jesus Christ, we shall find ourselves possessed of the very same righteousness that we would have secured by perfect obedience to the law had sin never entered into the world, for this righteousness of God is witnessed by the law and the prophets. That is, when the law sees in us the righteousness of God, its testimony as a witness is, I see fulfilled in you the righteousness that I would have seen if you had always obeyed my requirements, and I am satisfied. This is plain from another scripture. The law could not give righteousness in that it was weak through the flesh, and so God sent his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Romans 8:1-4. Thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift.